my personal perspective was I was not anti-war, uh, but I did not want to participate in the war. So it's just a little bit of uh, discontinuity, but there were a number of people who throughout the country were anti-war, and it was a growing movement. But Kent was a very conservative school for the most part, and there was not a large amount of anti-war people who were at Kent State at the time of in May of 2000 in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
Nationally, the protest movements were growing. You saw a protest movement growing in the early 60s, primarily focused on civil rights and free speech. There was a free speech movement in the mid 60s at Berkeley, and also in the mid 60s, is about 64, 65, they put ground troops into Vietnam. So you had the beginnings of anti-war movement in Vietnam. So you saw the Students for Democratic Society, the Underground Weatherman, a number of national protest organizations start to grow, and they were taking root in a number of universities. University of Michigan, where the SDS was formed, was a bit of a hotbed for protest movements. Some of the larger universities in there, I mentioned Berkeley, Stanford, University of Texas, even Ohio State, but not Kent State. So you had a growing national movement, but when an organization that had some 200 chapters, such as the SDS, tried to form at Kent State, they weren't successful. They had a couple of demonstrations there, and they ended up having more anti-SDS people at the demonstration than they did people supporting them.
Yes.
It really, and it escalated, I think, on Thursday night, which would have been the 30th of April, when President Nixon announced that they had bombed Cambodia. And while Nixon was talking about de-escalating the war, and you had an anti-war movement to begin with, when he announced that publicly that he was bombing Cambodia, everybody viewed that as an escalation of the war, and people were seeing a greater involvement of the country in a war that I think everybody had a difficult time explaining why we were in it. And a lot of the students were on campus to get their 2S deferment so they wouldn't get drafted. And all of a sudden, they feel like they're escalating the war. So that, I think, hit the mood of the country all the way across the board. So you saw protest in other universities, some of them violent. There was a group of people that were asking for a rally on Monday at noon. And Monday would have been May 4th. And the university was saying you can't have a rally. And it's like, this is, another event where you're, well, yeah, I'm going to go there to see what's going on. Why can't I have a rally?
Mm-hmm.
So we went to class. Most of the kids went to class in the morning, and then around noon, people, or 11:30, as classes started to let out for lunch and that kind of thing. People started to migrate to the commons to see what was going to happen. The university was saying you can't have a rally, and the kids were saying, well, why not? But with the events that took place, the downtown on Friday night, the burning of the ROTC building on Saturday, and on Sunday, the governor showed up and made some real inflammatory statements, characterized the students of Kent as brown shirts, which was a pickup from Vice President Agnew. It tells you the class of people you were dealing with. Which somewhat incensed the people who were aware of that. So you had all these instances, the curfew, people wanted to speak out. We don't like the war. That basically we don't like an expansion of the war when you're telling us you're going to de-escalate it. We don't like the troops on campus. They were kind of indifferent to the ROTC, but the ROTC building was an eyesore, so we don't like that either. So we showed up to do that. And when I say we, I was there too. I took my camera out, so, I stayed on the outskirts of it so that people weren't, and just took pictures of the protest.